Okay, so I've been trying to think about what I wanted to talk about next, moving forward with my channel. Sorry, I'm silencing everything because I forgot to do it right when I started the video. And bear with me. I woke up stuffy today and I feel kind of ugh, but I'm going to try to get through this anyway. So I was thinking about what I should talk about next for my next video for this channel, and I really started thinking I need to talk about what happened to me at the psych hospital, like in detail, what I can remember. But then I started thinking, and I want to talk about that. I do. But I started thinking, I wrote a book. A couple of years after all this happened, I sat down at the computer and I wrote like an artistic version of what happened to me in written form. And it was kind of a short story. And I never did anything with it. I honestly haven't looked at it in years. I just pulled it up on Word. And I mean, I think this is from 20, I don't even know. I'd have to figure that out, but it doesn't matter. I wrote a book, and I wrote a really long prologue to this book. Sorry, I'm shaking the table. I got to figure out a better way, but I wrote a prologue to the book, and I was just glancing through it, and it's really long, and it's, while it's good, for now, I think I'm just going to start reading my book, starting at like the very beginning after the prologue, and just see if this is, worth putting out there, because my mind has changed so much since then, but it was fresh when I wrote this book. I don't know, I guess it's a book. Anyway, so I thought that I would just go ahead and like maybe read the first couple of, I guess, chapters. I didn't really number it, but let's just see how this goes. I named it The Prisoner. And it starts with a quote. I'm thankful for my struggle, because without it, I wouldn't have stumbled across my strength. It was late summer of 2013 when something noticeably wrong began to surface in my head. I was sitting in a friend's garage when I had a distinctive sense of darkness come over me, an unfamiliar new doom like none I'd ever experienced before, borderline demonic, if you will, like something you would see in a dusky vampire movie. As an artist, let's just say I have a colorful imagination. There was no definitive trigger. Nothing that I could put my finger on to elicit this new presence. It honestly seemed to grow out of nowhere. No new trauma, no new grief. One day it was absent, the next present. It stayed with me for a few months, the thoughts so disturbing and unsettling that as soon as they appeared, I'd shake my head as if to jiggle them loose from my mind. I continued to do this until it seemingly worked. Unfortunately, what I failed to consider was that I managed to inadvertently slip these vile thoughts onto the back burner of my cognizance, and for a while it faded away until it didn't. A back burner isn't the worst of places to put a bad feeling or thought, after all, but as we know from experience in the kitchen, when you put something on the back burner, you don't often do so with the intent of ditching it altogether. Usually you place it in this strategic spot on low heat, preserving your delicate dish by simmering the ingredients to perfection over time. At the time, I didn't consider this risk a possibility, as the priority for these thoughts was to get them out of sight. It was a simple conclusion. Out of sight, out of mind, right? Wrong. Consequently, this ended up being the perfect conditions for which this once slight darkness gently boiled for about a year, unbeknownst to me. And what has the potential to occur when you leave the stove unattended? You can inadvertently start a kitchen fire. So while a back burner may not be the worst place to put negative thoughts and feelings, it certainly isn't a permanent solution by any sight. And this is where my trouble began. Quote, "We are all broken. That's how the light gets in." Ernest Hemingway. A year later, give or take, a vision as clear as a dream began to surface in my mind. The vision specific and detailed. It was of me driving down a beautiful country road, through hills and trees with birds singing, the music gently playing, the sun constantly shining high in the noon sky. I was just cruising along with minimal care in the world, like a fun, lonesome road trip. The moon was absent and the night never came. At the time, this constant daytime didn't distress me. However, in retrospect, this seemingly insignificant detail of my vision held great value. After some interpretation, I came to the conclusion that this image was a metaphor for life. We all have our own journeys to travel, likewise, our own paths to discover. We may share freeways along the way, but for the most part, we are all on an individual road that is designed just for us. We drive our vehicles and we go our own ways, our paths and detours molded by the choices we make, the big ones and the small ones. We all choose our directions and how we wish to arrive at our destinations with nominal navigation. This was mine. I wasn't lost, nor was I wandering. I was just traveling down a long, peaceful, and uneventful stretch on what appeared to be the right road until one day I recognized I wasn't alone. As all drivers do, we check our mirrors while in motion, and I am no exception. For the tiniest of split seconds, I nonchalantly glanced in my rearview mirror, and there it was, something that shook me to my core. The unrest I felt is still a struggle to convey, a feeling not dissimilar to the feeling that you get when you know someone is watching you sleep. What I saw was a dark, grayish-brown, smoky, orb-like energy billowing afloat right in the back seat of my vehicle. A smoldering negative energy, some kind of ball of darkness. It was just fixed there. It hovered over my shoulder, and the thoughts in my mind began to kindle. I didn't even hear it. The faintest little cry of my muffled inner voice yelling, "Help me! There's a fire in your kitchen!" Uncertain as I was, I pushed forward. I felt right in my pushing, as if the effort itself meant something. I have to look up and see who did that quote. At first, I was somewhat intrigued by this new energy, completely unaware of the level of evil it possessed. It seemed to pose no immediate threat, but the mere fact that it was an uninvited guest suggested that a threat was imminent. I began to study it, analyze it, and examine it, all while never swiveling my head around to look directly at it. It was there. I knew it was there. It knew I knew it was there. There was no logical sense in my mind whatsoever to deliberately turn around and acknowledge or concede to its presence. It was, for a lack of a better word, a stranger. An instant outsider in my space whose behavior I was covertly observing. It was an ugly beauty. It hung there in constant movement, hovering in one place, churning and swirling like smoke seeping through the cracks of a broken crystal ball. It muted all noises, no sounds of birds, songs, no engines, white noise, no music, no road under the wheels, no wind's whoosh over the side mirrors, just silence, an eerie, unnatural silence. Worry is a total waste of imagination. My intrigue didn't last long as I began to be concerned. Then worry set in. A storm of questions began flooding my mind. Where did this thing come from? How did it get in my car? I went from thought to thought. All had been going so well, an ordinary smooth ride. Then suddenly, for no apparent reason whatsoever, the whole situation now had this new unwelcomed variable. More questions. Was it something I did? Had I inadvertently let this thing inside? The more important questions began. What if this wasn't a spontaneous occurrence? Could I have been so focused on the path ahead, my schooling, my career, my relationships, my future, that somehow I missed something so alarmingly out of place? Could it be that I actually failed to see the danger within the framework of my own vehicle by being blinded by the lines on the road in front of me? Had I been asleep at the wheel? The more I contemplated, the more powerful its gaze became. It knew I was trying to figure it out, and it didn't want me to. But what was it trying to say? And why was it there? And how was I to rid it from the cabin in my car? Shortly after this vision began, an intuition began to take root. An intuition comparable to the fight or flight response we get when someone is walking too closely behind us in a crowd, or if you were to spot a shark circling you in open waters. This wasn't a friend. This wasn't an angel of faith. This was a danger, an adversary, a tormentor with a cruel purpose. But that purpose? Unknown. Another quote. I need to figure out who these are by. Your worst battle is between you. Your worst battle is between what you know and what you feel. Let's backtrack for a moment to survey this vehicle I'm traveling in. This is no ordinary vehicle. This hunk of metal I'm driving in is very unique. It's not fancy in any kind of way. I can't abandon nor escape it. I can't shut it down, and I can't turn it around. There's no reverse. It can only travel forward. This vehicle is currently 36 years old and has hundreds of thousands of miles on it. 36 years old. This was 6 years ago that I wrote this. So 2017 is when I wrote this. Though it may sputter on occasion, it will only break down once, at the very end of the journey. My death. For this vehicle is my mind, the wheel, my helm, my direct guide through space and time. The value of this vehicle is priceless because it was free. It was a gift. It was given to me at birth, and it is mine to drive to my very last breath. Ooh, this one, Buddha. Rule your mind or it will rule you. As a natural-born problem and puzzle solver, when I first noticed the darkness in my mirror, I wondered if this was a problem that needed fixing or perhaps a puzzle to be solved. I would have thoughts like, if I think this way, maybe it'll go away, or if I think that way, maybe it'll go away. There was no shaking the thoughts to an alternate burner. Wait a minute. There was no shaking the thoughts to an alternate burner this time, though. It was cooked and done and breathing down my neck. In real time, and after a couple of months of obsessed contemplation, I revisited my vision. The persistence in my perspective shifting seemed to have a positive effect, but only once and very briefly. Still traveling in high noon sunlight, I looked up to the mirror again to see that energy was no longer in the back seat and in my direct line of sight. Assuming a culmination of thoughts had shifted the energy's power away and out of my vehicle, I felt a brief sense of relief and victory. Until my peripheral vision kicked in. It was now right next to me, claiming shotgun in the passenger seat. It had gone from a cab fare to riding first class in the blink of an eye. That was the moment I understood that its desire to remain an abiding passenger was far from the truth. To add to my fear, this thing had every psychological weapon in the book. Gaslighting, emotional manipulation, mind control, depression, anxiety, victim mentality. It was egomaniacal and downright ruthless. With limitless ammo, it attacked my very thoughts and was holding me hostage at mental gunpoint. That's kind of an odd quote. I haven't proofread this in a very long time, so some of it I'm editing as we go. I figured that there was only one apparent reason for its closer proximity to me, its purpose revealed in that very instance. It was trying to hijack my vehicle, my journey, the drive and the adventure. There were no more vacant seats. The one it wanted was the one I occupied, the one with the wheel, the one with all the control. In my active efforts to attempt to psychologically sabotage it, it had only advanced. I had failed. I had to face the facts. I couldn't think myself out of this one. I couldn't think this darkness away. That damn back burner is where the fiendish gloom, fully ignored, simmered for over a year, and now it was back, perfectly prepared, not only to threaten my personal space, but my entire well-being. This was a big turning point in my life. In my private reality, I cried. I screamed. I went into full-blown frantic mania, doing everything I could to literally think this enemy out of my hand and off the reins. I gotta find who this is by. It is both a blessing and a curse to feel everything so very deeply. This war went on for months. Outside of my metaphor, I ended up in a very real nightmare. While all of this was going on subconsciously, in truth, I was in very real danger. The failure of my last hasty attempt changed the trajectory of my journey for good. It was this time that I ended up in a mental hospital and experienced the worst fear and treatment I've ever come to know. The enemy had gotten its grimy fingers on the wheel. I was becoming the passenger of my own mind and of my own life. This journey, this vehicle, this energy was all a parable for what was really going on in my life at the time, a circumstance to which I could have never communicated to you until now. Hindsight is in fact perfect vision. Today, the retrospect is much clearer. See, I knew this was going to happen, so I got my tissues. I didn't read this. I haven't read this in years, and I thought I would just do a video and not read it beforehand. And I don't even know where this goes. I don't even know where it's going, but I'm just going to keep going. We're only 15 minutes in, so I've got some time, but you may have to bear with me through some tears here. And some breaks to compose myself, because I want to get through this. Okay. whenever there's like a quote that I don't know who actually wrote it, I'm just going to say anonymous for now until I can figure it out. Anonymous. It's scary what a smile can hide. Anonymous. I acted like it wasn't a big deal when really it was breaking my heart. Back to my story. On the outside, you wouldn't have understood the battle within. I would cry in private while I was smiling my way through life and social situations, distracting myself with hobbies, arts, and mundane errands. But once I felt this darkness take the wheel, my control was lost. I spiraled downward fast and recklessly. It became evident to the people in my life. No one knew what was going on with me. No one had ever seen me this out of character, out of sorts, and out of my mind. My friend from the garage absent during my darkest hour. The orb took the wheel, and I entered a complete state of mania. In my distress, I couldn't get the figurative lights to turn off. I spent 96 hours awake prior to my rush to the emergency room. I couldn't satisfy my hunger no matter how much I ate. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't slow my heart rate. I couldn't quench my thirst. I couldn't speak as rapidly as my thoughts were spawning. My nerves were shot. I was only certain about one thing, and one thing only. I was either going to have a heart attack, a stroke, or die. It was appearing as if the only way to rid my vehicle of this enemy was to put the pedal to the metal, its hands on the wheel, my foot on the gas, and drive my vehicle straight into a deadly obstacle, a suicide mission. I know this is me. I made up this quote. I know I made up this quote. I've said it several times. When the system for helping the mentally ill is broken, the mentally ill cannot be mended. Back to my story. I remember it well. I arrived at the emergency room on the evening of Wednesday, April 1st, 2015. How's that for irony? The world's seemingly sick way of playing some kind of practical April Fool's joke on me. In the 7 hours I spent at the emergency room, I was rehydrated and monitored. My body finally began to resume functionality as I was no longer starved for hunger, my thirst quenched. While I laid in my hospital bed, finally feeling a sense of rest, my mind would begin to doze off. I wouldn't fall asleep for more than 2 or 3 minutes before someone would noisily enter the room to either check my vitals or start asking me a dozen questions. I just wanted sleep. I needed sleep. And I wasn't even being given that amenity. Security officers were placed at my door, and the doors were to remain open at all times. That was the prologue to the subsequent hell to follow. I heard my parents and my husband arguing with hospital staff in the halls before I finally said, "Fine, I'm giving up. I'll go wherever you say." Hold on, I have to check this. Oh, shoot, I have to check this. When it dings like that, it's emergency bypass, so somebody... Sure, that's fine. I'm sorry, guys. I may have to re-record this. Oh. Okay, I heard my parents and husband arguing with hospital staff in the halls before I finally said, "Fine, I'll give up. I'll go wherever you say." After that brief emergency room visit, I spent 7 days in a mental institution after being told earlier by the hospital that it would be a 72-hour hold. I was made to walk from the ER to what appeared to be a crude makeshift ambulance in the middle of the night, sit on a hard metal bench in the back, unbuckled, alone in the dark, with an iron gate dividing me from the driver. I was terrified. In an effort to ease my mind, I tried to make small talk with my chauffeur about the music on the radio, but it was of no importance to him. A terrible thought approached. I was in the back of the ultimate kidnapper's van. My vision was now the farthest thing from my mind, my paranoia on point. Okay, guys, I'm going to take a break because I have somebody swinging by to get something. But let's just do this in maybe 20-minute increments because I think it's going to be hard for me, harder for me than I thought. And I can't believe that I remembered that I wrote this book, and I've never shared it with anybody. So, I think this is a really good way to do it. And I don't remember, that I wrote that. It's like I said, what year did I say it was? 2017? It was almost 4 years ago. Or not 7 years ago. I'm sorry. It was almost 7 years ago. And I don't remember now what I wrote then. So I think this is a really good way to start, putting this out there. But there's some stuff in here that I wrote it down. And maybe I wrote it down for this reason, to share it here now. Even though it's 7 years later and 9 years since my diagnosis, maybe it's just, it all fell into place for me to share it here now. So let's just start there, and I will continue after I recover a little bit from that and I take care of this guest that's stopping by. So anyway, stay tuned. There's more coming. So this is The Prisoner Part 1.